Yeah, so this feels like I'm gonna have all my really close friends on the podcast so I can just,
Mm.
you know, be comfy and, in this space. I have Millie Murillo. Am I saying your last name right, Millie?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I don't say your last name often, so it just occurred to me, but, I have her in the house, and we were talking a little bit before we got started, like, "What should we talk about?" And I'm like, "We should just riff as we do, because I feel like there's rich grist for the mill always."
I feel like every time we, like, meet, it's like we just come together and we just start talking. It's not
Yeah.
even like, yeah, we'll say hi, and then it's like
Yeah, and the portal opens and clarity erupts, and we've, like, have a vision of where everything is headed, and yes, this is why I was like, "Okay, you need to come on the podcast first because we need to do this in real time." But, so when I've been doing the podcast, pulled a card at the end of the I started to say sessions because I think of everything in terms of sessions after so
Mhm.
many years of therapy.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the episode, I've pulled a card, but, um, I think and we'll see if this sticks, when I have someone on, I'm gonna read the card at the beginning because I wanna get your response, right? So,
Okay.
this is from this deck I'm gonna show for those of you watching on YouTube. It's the
Oh,
Goddess and
that's
Gods,
beautiful.
or
Yeah.
Goddess, Gods, and Guardians Oracle
Yeah.
deck. Do you have this deck?
No, but it's beautiful.
It's really potent deck, and the card that I pulled, how would you pronounce this, Millie?
Imhotep.
See? Isn't she magical? I'm like, that's my friend Millie, guys. Okay, Imhotep. And the card, and this is why, like, I smiled when it came out, before a conversation with you, but I won't say more. And it says Imhotep Visionary, designing the future, using ancient wisdom with modern methods. Imhotep started as a commoner, but through his visionary genius became enormously influential in Egypt during the Third Dynasty. He was a high priest of Heliopolis? Heliopolis? Um, Vizier to the kings and chief architects of King. They're just making me pronounce a lot of words on this one. Josher's step pyramid, which paved the way for the Great Pyramids. Known as the first physician, Imhotep was practicing medicine over 2,000 years before Hippocrates was born. His
Mm.
legacy was so profound that after his death, he was elevated to a god of medicine and architecture. Without Imhotep, modern medicine might not be where it is today. So that's just the background. But the actual description of the card is: when Imhotep appears, it's a clear indication of your visionary gifts.
Mm.
Your soul's intention is to create pioneering change through implementing
Mm.
divinely inspired ideas. Millie Morio. There's no doubt that you've come to Earth to redesign infrastructure, stir the pot, and establish protocols, and use innovative, progressive methods to evolve humanity. You're a visionary, guided by the divine im- guided by the divine to implement projects that can help heal and inspire our world. What do you want to improve or innovate?
Mm.
Maybe you're a teacher who's frustrated by the education system, or a medical professional who'd love to combine modern medicine with holistic treatments. Perhaps your passion lies in environmentalism, politics, science, or fighting prejudice or injustice. If you're passionate about what needs to evolve, then you're the one who can make a difference. Emotep is guiding you step by step. Take one day at a time and break the vision down
Mm.
into manageable chunks. You can be a trailblazer who fuses ancient wisdom and cutting edge technique. This is your time to change the world. I mean, Millie.
I feel like that's such an appropriate card for us meeting because I think that
Mm,
so many times when we meet, and like I said, it's like we just meet and the conversation starts.
mm,
It's so much around reimagining the world that we live in.
mm,
So much around reimagining um being in the world and relating to the world and relating to other people in it in a way that is vastly different than what it is right now.
yes. Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And it's funny that, like, the timer as I looked up and you were saying imagining the world was 4:44, but that's neither here nor there. Um, but there's just something, and I'm gonna get into starting to ask you questions in a second, but there's something about you, Millie, that, well, a little bit of background. We met in our friend John Kim's the Angry Therapist Lab, which is a coaching community that he started in 2020 when everyone was indoors and we started to just have community online. And it was so funny because I think for the first 2 years that we knew each other, at least, like I'd never been in the same room with you or met you in person, but I was
Yeah.
just so captivated by all of your teachings and your classes. And I remember you used to have an astrology class on Sundays that I started calling like Millie's Astrology Church because I would just be there, like writing down little nuggets that it was so clear to me you were channeling from somewhere beyond. I don't know why I knew this, but I just knew, like, you were channeling something from something bigger than yourself, and you were just, like, coming through with such clear messages, and, like, much later, I asked you about it, and you were like, "It's funny that you picked that up because I was."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
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 Um, Go ahead.
That's, it's I remember you saying that, and I remember kind of being like, "Oh my god, people see it. People notice."
Mm,
Because I was so young in like really doing being an astrologer and a coach full time. Like it was
mm,
so still so new to me. And so when you said that, I remember being like, people see that? It was a thing. I remember that.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'd be curious to ask everyone that was
Mm,
there. And I think it's, I often come back to that teaching in the Bhagavad Gita that says when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I feel like on my path, I have had certain collisions that have been so profound in the precise moment that I needed them, and I know for sure that is by divine orchestration, but you were one of those for me because it was like a really dark night period in 2021 for me. I was really like grappling with how I was configuring my experience of the world and relationships and
mm,
just feeling like I see this differently than everybody. I feel like I'm an
mhm.
alien. Nobody understands me. And I was having one of those like pity parties. I don't know. But and then I found you, and there was, like, all of these ways that I was like, "Oh, she gets it. She
Mm,
understands," right? And it wasn't just that you understood, it was like you were the divine speaking through you to me, saying things that were so unbelievably supportive and containing of what felt like really destabilizing energy for me, right? And so I think it's interesting because I'm sure everyone and I could
mm,
see was really profoundly impacted by your work and what you were saying, but I think there's also a way that um I don't
mm.
know. There was just something about like our particular connection that just felt really healing for me on a soul level.
Oh, I received that. I received that so much. And I think you're right because I felt the same with you. You know, throughout my adult life, I hadn't really clicked with someone
Mm,
who just got the way that I saw the world. The way where it's like, no, but there's more. No,
mm.
but it can be different. No, but we are more. No, but don't you see the signs? Right. And so I remember just going through life kind of like I would throw these little nuggets out there to people randomly and in like the environments that I was in. And I remember kind of like testing the water to see who there would would take the bait, right? And people constantly what was reflected back to me was you're one of those or you're crazy or and I remember that when you and I really started like having more conversations and connecting more deeply, I thought, oh, wow, she gets it.
Mm.
She gets it. And I'm just really grateful that John created a platform where I could develop into speaking openly about these things. It became a really safe space for an hour every Sunday morning. And I even remember like kind of treading lightly. And as more time went on, I was like, oh, I can really talk about it all. And it was just it was truly like a pivotal time.
I'm laughing inside so hard because it is so like on brand, Millie, that you were like, I would throw things out and I would test them because I feel like you have, in the stories you've told me about your life experience, like always had this bold energy. And I was facilitating a group last night and someone was like,
Mm.
Danae, just like the way you're like bold in the way that you feel about things like unapologetically. And I'm like, girl, I wasn't always this way. Like, I did not have that. I was probably the one like Millie's testing, and they're like, oh, you're crazy. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I'm probably crazy. Like, I'm probably weirdo. But I'm like, now I feel like there's all these ways that you guided me towards like, yes, I am. And I'm not apologizing for
Right.
it. That's just who I am. But you've always had this like, um, I am who I am, and I'm not gonna apologize for that, and it's one of the things that I admire so much about you
Mm.
sisters. That's like a deep knowing that you've carried throughout this lifetime.
Thank you for that. It hasn't been easy. Like I
Mm,
think that that has been something that I've had to know ever since I was
mm,
very young, like a little girl. I've had to if I've always received a lot of backlash in so many ways. And I think that now as an adult, I can say, oh, M- Millie as a little girl had something and people
mm.
can tell, right? I have a nephew now. And so the way that I look at children is so different. Like children carry magic.
Yeah.
And I think that children carry magic in a way that certain adults there's something about it. There's something about it that either rubs them the wrong way or whatever it is that it reflects back to them, they don't know how to handle it or they don't know how to hold it. And I remember as a little girl just kind of having to be like a little warrior and then
Mm,
growing up that way. And so that can be a double-edged sword, but and just my life experience, it wasn't the easiest. And
mm,
having to constantly come back to, no, but this is what I know to be true for me. And even if I didn't have all of the words to explain it, there was just something in my heart. I mean, I think it's been like my ongoing connection to source.
mm.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so beautiful. I think what adults see in children when they see the expression of children's magic is what they have been conditioned to disavow within themselves. And I think the
Mhm,
pain of witnessing it brings up such a visceral reaction. And children are
mhm,
such intuitive, perceptive little beings. Like, when we're young, we're still so attuned to that I think they feel that and they experience it as a rejection. But what I've always found so inspiring within you is that you really had that ability very young to differentiate like that's not about me, that's your stuff, right? Like most of us don't have that because we're so in need of the attachment of our
mhm,
caregivers, and so we're
mhm,
so like, oh, there must be something that's bad that I need to shut down or suppress because
mhm.
you're having a strong reaction to me versus the way you carried it was like, I know that's not about me,
Right.
that's clearly something within you. But I want to, before we continue, ask you the question that I want to ask all of my guests. And just really about life force and eros and aliveness. And if you had to drop in for a second and ask yourself, like, what is bringing you that sensation of eros in your life right now? What has that been? What is it currently?
Oh, I mean, I have reclaimed um in a very significant way my connection to God.
Mm,
And it's not that it hasn't been there. It's just that particularly last year in 2024 I went through this process of individuation
mm,
from a lot of identities, if you will,
mm,
particularly from family. And I think from that, then realizing, oh, I'm not small,
Mm.
right? I'm not just another person. And that feels like again, like a very bold thing to say because we're not allowed to say those things.
Yes.
But it's like in this ongoing conversation with God, realizing, oh, no, I need to claim this for myself.
Mm.
I need to claim to that extent that I have not just a connection to God, but that I need to really see my light in this way, that I really need to see what I came here to do, this remembering, right? And yeah, throughout my life, I've had to fight. I would say fight. There's been a lot of
Mm.
fighting in claiming who I am and saying, no, this is who I am. But that doesn't go without dimming your light in some way because you get
Mm.
tired.
Yeah.
You get tired of fighting for who you are, right? But what I realized is no, for so long I think I tried to get people to see me and I didn't realize
Mm.
that God was seeing me, right? And so how do I see myself in the way that God sees me? Such a like that is the connection, that is the thing that is keeping me going right now and actually understanding that, oh, we get to live miraculous lives.
Mm.
We get to experience ourselves in love, right? And I say these things and there's a part of me that says, "Oh, so much is going to be missed when I say these things." And it's been something that I've spent a lot of time with over the last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. So I'm sort of going back a little bit when we talk about the thing of why we do that and why we get tired. I think there's a way that our human self and you and I and like in the world we talk a lot about like the differentiation between the ego and the soul
Hmm.
and those aspects of self, right? And our ego that is in this body has the experience of needing to figure out how to stay in this body, not be annihilated, right? And so from our human self, that is, I create attachments to other people and I believe that I need them to see me in order to be a self, right? Like, so there's all these reasons why, in terms of our like psychology, that's developmentally necessary. And what ends up happening is a lot of times we internalize some of the
Hmm.
messages we were talking about before about our limitations, and that becomes a way that we fit in, right? Like,
Hmm.
you don't say you're God. Like, there are places that are even like that's like a blasphemous thing to say, like, you are a miracle or you're like a little cup of God in human form. Like, I can't even tell you a joke all the time when I'm facilitating that it felt like I was like coming out of the closet a little bit when I started talking about my spiritual beliefs and like the things that had just brought so much healing for me, because there's all of these ways that that sort of rubs up against all that we're taught like we get to be. But there's a time and a place in what I hear and what you're saying where, that Anais Nin quote that I'm going to butcher because I don't have it in front of me, but it's something around, and then the day came when the
Hmm.
pain of remaining small in a bud became greater than the fear of allowing ourselves to bloom, right?
Hmm.
And so there's a point when it's like, I know that I came into this life to be whatever iteration of divine essence in human form for a while, and
Hmm.
not being that is
Hmm.
causing more pain than the fear of exile that I've felt for so long around if I allow myself to shine in my essence and in the truth of who I am.
Well, of course, because once you get to that point where you realize, oh, this is the point,
Mm.
there is no feeling of exile. If anything, there is a feeling of full embrace and acceptance,
Yes.
right?
And
It's
even love for like who would be exiling you because you understand, right?
exactly, exactly,
Yes. Yeah.
exactly. And so, I mean, I think it's important to name that, you know, at least in my experience, when I talk about this connection to God and the experience of feeling that godly presence, that eternal presence within me, the
Mm.
all that isness, right?
Mhm.
It becomes about a remembering. Like it becomes about the remembering of this is who we are.
Mhm.
And it's not so much about I'm gonna get all the material things that I want. I'm gonna manipulate life to go my way. No,
Mm.
it's in this remembering, oh, there's still a ride. I'm along for a ride. I don't know what's gonna happen, right? But there is something about living this very human existence from that space.
I'm giggling because I feel like you and I will go to dinner and I'm like, I know exactly what you're saying. And then there's always the part of me that I'm like, do people know what she's saying?
Right?
Because
I
I
think
think
that
a
all the
lot of
time.
I'm like, do you understand what she means, y'all? Um, because it's just like, I don't know how to explain it except that as you're talking, I'm thinking, yes. And even in that thing of like, I don't have to worry how this is going to play out, there's a knowing that it's always playing out perfectly that
Mhm,
starts to come into
mhm,
our conscious awareness, and that like
mhm,
all of it is the dance, all of it is the unfolding, and it's always in perfect divine
mhm,
order. And this
mhm.
is something I feel like we giggle about a lot when we're together. It's like you're just all of a sudden like, oh, there's like legitimately nothing I have to worry about. And it
Right.
can sound like maddening, like, what are they on? But it's, I don't know. And that was just like what was coming up as you were talking. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's important to name as well, right? Because think about the times that we're living in, right?
Yes. But yes, let's come to the tangible, like down to planet Earth.
Right.
That's
Right.
good. Yeah.
Let's think about the times that we're living in from an astrological perspective.
Hmm.
2025 is a massive pivotal year, right? That the only thing that we can really compare it to, like in modern history to us, that is the most palpable is probably 2020. But even then, 2025 is so different in that we are really being asked to step into a completely new chapter in our lives that we don't know that part of us yet. We don't know that character of us yet. We don't know that role of us yet. But there's a pull. There
Hmm.
is a very strong intuitive knowing of I'm meant to head in that direction and I don't know why. And all of that comes back to, oh, but I have to trust. It's almost like we have no other choice but to trust, because if we try to logic our way into this next chapter in our life, we're going to fall short, because that's not the point right now. And so
Right.
this is where these where what we're talking about meets like this tangible reality that we're living. It's a pivotal time, it's a transformative time. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of distraction that is purposely being created. And I
Mm.
quite frankly think that it's so that we don't tap into the opportunity that we have right now to awaken that very, I mean, for lack of a better term, that very magical part in us. Because when we trust, it's not that we won't ever feel fear, it's not that we won't ever feel worry, but we have created a pathway back to trust each and every single time,
Oof. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, to me, it's the awakening of the God self, right? Or
Mhm,
the
mhm,
recognition of
mhm,
the God within. And
mhm,
I think what is dying, shifting, becoming clear to all of us. And I do think the last 5 years have been preparation for this. I'm here curious to
mhm,
hear your thoughts.
mhm,
Is really that like we don't get to have the illusion that we know anymore. I think it's always been a bit of an illusion that we get to control or like this is what we can count on. But I think
mhm,
there's all of these ways where that has really been limiting in terms of our magic and what we're able to create. And we're not challenging ourselves to step into our potential because we didn't have to, right? And
Exactly.
it's so funny. It's like such a like small example and it's like embarrassing, but I feel like there's all of these ways that I've been
Mm.
challenging myself over the last week because I was having conversations about, just like how I think we have to get so much more into like doing things locally and not like instant gratification and like having things delivered. And so I'm like, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm like straight up like taking those apps off my phone. I'm going
Yeah.
to like only do things locally. But it's like, we start to get creative with how we find things when things aren't easy and things aren't just like
Mhm.
accessible to us immediately. And that I think is what is going to expand when there's all these ways that we don't get to tap into the illusion of comfort. It's like, okay, well, what am I capable of if I have to challenge myself to dig a little deeper now? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. This is what I meant when I said we can't just logic our way out of this experience. And I think
Mm,
that so much of the last 5 years has been about educating ourselves. Um, like, what does it mean when when I feel this? So how do I hold it? Like very
mm,
technique like, how do I relate to someone else? And how do I set boundaries, right? I think psychology has had a boom in the last 5 years, particularly
right.
since 2020. And I
Yeah.
think that those tools are powerful and I think they're important. But if we only rely on that, we are missing out on soul. We are missing out on internal guidance and intuition that needs to go hand in hand with everything that we've learned in the last 5 years. And that getting to know that creative part in us, right? That part that asks us to go a little deeper, to wait for things a little bit more, right? Because intuition, we don't always, it doesn't always give us an answer immediately. Certain things have to play out. And getting to know that how that works within us in our body, that's a practice in itself, but it's a different practice. It takes time because I think it's very particular to each individual.
Mm. Do you think that there's been more of a focus on the psychology because we've been more afraid and there's been more anxiety with the like uncertainty getting revved up over the last 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
that when you think about picking up a book that talks about attachment and it
Mm,
tells you the attachment style and it has a very particular description of it,
yeah.
right? It comes in a box. We read it and we're like, "Oh, that's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. I have something to hold on to." There's nothing wrong with that. And if that is all we have, if that is all we have from book to book, from lecture to seminar to class, we're staying up here and we miss, I feel, the lesson that there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you came to experience to learn a much deeper lesson. You actually came to be that thing that you think you need to fix.
Well, absolutely. I think it's beautiful that you say that because there's all of these ways that I do think the box, the pathology, maybe the label, whatever it is, becomes the structure,
Mhm,
which gives me some sort of conceptualization and understanding, right? Like that's
mhm,
my rational knowledge and understanding of whatever this is.
mhm,
The issue becomes then it starts to be a limitation. So if
mhm,
I believe that I am anxiously attached, there's
mhm,
all of these ways that I start to put limits on what I am capable of doing and how I am capable of tending to myself and all of these things that are really in alignment with what I believe are our soul's curriculum and the lessons that we are meant to learn through the anxiety that is evoked in our relationships with other people. But if it's like, nope, I'm just an anxiously attached person, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be, it's like, well, then life is going to present you with circumstances that really rev that up and challenge you to get uncomfortable enough to like be in the space of what else could be true other than all I'm going to be is anxiously attached and this is my story and I'm sticking
Mhm,
to it. It's like
mhm,
life. I believe what's really been turned up over the last few years is like life. And this is something you said, actually, Millie. I remember when you were like, life is giving us like this swift kick in the butt. And it's like, you don't get to do that anymore. All of the things that have sort of been like where you've been leaning for comfort, it's
mhm,
like that parent that's sort of pushing you out of the nest in
mhm.
ways that can feel really harsh, but it's like we're being shown where we've been leaning on the illusion of our limitations, you know?
Absolutely. Because it's still so small in comparison to what we actually are.
Yeah.
It's still so small in comparison to the truth of what we really are.
Mm,
And the truth of what we really are is the energy of, again, source.
mm,
We are source energy because we come from source energy. And we are here having a human experience that comes with all of the things that it comes with. It comes with everything we've been talking about so far. But we are here to remember that we come from source energy. Why we came here to remember that, life will show us. Because then it becomes of like, okay, now that I'm remembering, now that I'm having a different relationship with this knowing, now that I'm leaning onto it more, I think the human mind will say, okay, well, what do I do with it? What am I going to do with it? Or how do I let it guide me into, as Abraham Hicks says, into the next logical step? Right? And that's how we begin like this dance between the human and soul.
yes.
They were
Yeah.
never meant to be separate. And I think that's where I think, quite frankly, that is what has caused so much pain and suffering in our human existence, that we completely got away from soul, from certain practices, from the understanding of who we actually are, and said, all we are is this human experience, period."
Yes.
Like, what? No way.
It's so funny. I was showing a video about the Thoth prophecies last night and that, they like literally were saying there was going to come a time in the history of humanity when they were going to get so disconnected from wonder and awe and reverence for the soul and for the sacred that it was going to require either a great recalibration or that human beings were going to cease to exist. It's a little like what Eckhart Tolle says of like it's evolve or die time. That's literally where we are. We cannot continue at the path on the path that we've been on, but really on this trajectory, right? So it's, we can either use that as something that feels terrifying and deeply destabilizing or something that is so unbelievably inspiring about what we have the potential to do right now. And it's an interesting thing. And I'm curious to hear what this brings up for you because I think, there's been so many conversations about artificial intelligence and AI lately, and I'm really sitting with it because I feel like anything that is met with fear, I always like, I wish I could raise one of my eyebrows. Really, I wish I could do that. I don't know why my eyebrow does not let me to, but whenever I hear fear, I start to get in the space of just skepticism. Like I'm like really curious. Like why are we so afraid? Why are we so afraid of artificial intelligence? And a lot of people are. And I certainly can understand and have felt some of that. Like this is taking us down the road of technology and the mind space in a way that we've already so identified with. But I heard Queer Cosmos, and his name's Colin, but I don't know his last name, but Queer Cosmos is his Instagram handle. But he was talking this morning about how this whole thing around AI is bringing us back to the need for our IA, and I loved it. And so his description of IA is something we talk about a lot, which is moving from the space of an inner authority, which is what I believe is the space of my soul's knowing, right? That still small voice within that tells me the unshakable truth that you can't talk me out of. But I believe AI is actually about to propel us into the space where we have no choice but to start really believing that I got to stop looking outside of myself because, oh, well, I don't know. What do you think of because? Like, it's just like a feeling that I have that this is the thing that's going to propel us back to we have to come back into what is not accessible beyond our human capabilities, right? Like, we have to lean into like the human gifts so much more because otherwise, what is the point of us as humans? Do you know what I mean?
Ooh, yeah. So a few things have come up for me. And again, for those that don't know, I'm an astrologer. I
I
have
just
been
realized I straight up didn't say anything about you. I'm like, yes, my friend Millie, go. Like, let me just start ripping for her. Like, what does she do? What is?
Who is this person?
I'm really good at this
Why
podcasting.
are why are we supposed to listen to her?
Hello, Millie, the astrologer. I apologize, everyone. Millie is an astrologer. Carry on. I apologize. Okay.
So, from an astrological perspective, right? Pluto, the planet of transformation. It's mostly know the planet of transformation, death and rebirth. But Pluto is this force. It's this energy that brings us face to face with the thing that is meant to disempower us, or with the thing that we think
Mm.
is the thing that is meant to completely disempower us. Sorry if you hear the background of my dog's growling. Um, with the thing we think is meant to disempower us. And then when we come face to face with it and we move through it, we realize, oh, I didn't die. Right.
Mm.
So then that initial fear and disempowerment becomes the very thing that empowers you.
Oof.
And I really invite everyone to think about one of the most challenging times in your life. It was probably one of the things that you didn't want to happen because you thought it was the scariest thing that could happen. And then it did happen. And then you had to rise from the ashes, right? And be reborn as Pluto tells us in astrology.
Mm.
Pluto entered the sign of Aquarius, which is meant to absolutely revolutionize technology as we see it, as it exists in the world, as we relate to it, to our human existence. I think that collectively, one of our greatest fears is being replaced, right?
Oof.
Being replaced by AI. So here we are, right? You have this fear. We're being replaced. Our jobs are being taken away. Our
Mm.
all of these narratives around AI, all of this fear. What we have gotten so far away from is certain gifts that we have. Certain gifts that we have that what happens if this thing outside of me, whoa, what happens if this thing outside of me replaces me and takes over? What do I do then? Who am I then?
Mm.
Right?
Oof.
One of the things that I have paid attention to recently is that there are studies that are being done around telepathy,
Yes.
right? And so telepathy is something that has been talked about in the recent past as woo woo, that's not real. It's been, heavily criticized by anyone who talks about it, who talks
Mhm.
about it in any way as something that is actual, like an actual means of communication. Pluto in Aquarius is about us coming back to that technology that we have within to communicate in a different way, to create in a different way, to imagine in a different way, right? The conversations around quantum leaping, right? The quantum realm, the creation in that space where anything can be created and healed and it's
Mm.
already done. That's all Pluto in Aquarius because if there is something outside of us that is reflecting things can be done differently, right? Technology is going to allow us to do things differently in our very human way. Then all that is saying back to us is saying, oh, wait a minute. So then there's technology within me that can allow me to live my life differently.
Oof.
So the reflection doesn't have to be one of fear. The reflection is about remembering as within, so without, as above, so below. So, what is my external reality showing me about the what can happen in this universe that I carry within me?
Mm.
That was a long answer, but I hope people are able to follow that because it is something that I have been paying attention to. And look, I think it's important to remember that the narratives of fear, you have to hold those lightly because don't doubt that the narratives of fear are created so that you forget that you are just as capable as anyone else.
That's it. I mean, so many things came up as you were saying that. It's interesting. Well, first of all, have you heard about the telepathy tapes? And I'm not just asking Millie, but this is like anyone who's listening because it's like a sensation. Everybody's talking about it. And I started listening to it, but I haven't gotten that
No.
far. But have you heard about this? So it's like a podcast documentary where they are documenting what you're talking about of actual um evidence that this woman has been gathering of people who are able to communicate. And it's children, I believe, that are able to communicate telepathically, which I know, right? Of course it
Sure.
is.
Right.
But I believe his name is Greg Braden. And I heard him on a podcast talking about just all of what you're saying and that all of these human capabilities that we haven't even scratched the surface of are
Mhm.
going to start coming online by design, but because of the shift in what is going to be like the revolution of technology. And like for those who are like, oh, we don't want this, like it's not even like coming, it's here. And people are saying that like the change in terms of civilization that AI is going to bring is going to be like as big as like the splitting of the atom, right? Like
Right.
it's that big of a deal. And so it is going like if you're talking about the world around us in the same way that like, you would be talking about it like it's going to be the same 5 years from now as it is now. It's just not. Like that's facts, right? And what I love about what you're saying is it does come into this like really sort of visceral existential fear of being replaced
Mhm.
because and we come back and this is just the way that my brain formulates everything is around relationships and what this
Mhm.
brings up for us relationally. And so that's sort of like the attachment, the original attachment wound, and that the origin point of that wound is sort of understanding that we were separate from our initial caretakers. But the actual attachment wound, from my perspective, is the belief that we are separate from source, right? And so
Mhm.
when we came into that space of believing that we are separate from the essence of where we came from, it's like, I need to do something to figure out how to be special so that I will maintain attachment, so that I won't be annihilated because I believe that I need that for survival.
Mhm.
Now, the reason I'm saying all of this is what you were saying before about this thing of like whatever our most visceral fear is, I believe it is a part of our soul's dharma in this lifetime to come into right relationship with that and have sort of a reckoning around it. And that's what is happening for certainly. I believe many of us, even when we're in resistance on an individual level, but that is happening for us collectively as well, right? And
Right.
there's that Joseph Campbell quote that it's the cave that you fear to enter is the cave that holds the treasure you seek. So, whatever it
Mhm.
is that you are terrified of experiencing in this lifetime, at some point you will have to be confronted with it. You will have to tango with that fear. But in that tango becomes the path of your soul's liberation and where your greatest potential lies. And, I know for me, so much of like my greatest fear was that thing of being like not even like replaced, but being like alone or left or not having someone taking care of me. And I think when that was the fear that I was confronted with when my marriage ended, it was like, oh, the fear that you've been like so vehemently defending against is the thing that becomes the key to your liberation. And
Mhm.
then it's like game on, like with what you can do with this life once you go beyond that fear. And it's to me, this is like what do we have the potential to be as a human race when we're not afraid of being replaced, when we're not afraid that like the rules as we've known them are all it is. It's like sky is so too limited, right? Like it's beyond sky's the limit. It's like we have no idea what we're going to be able to create. But I think again, telepathy is just like the tippy tip of the iceberg of what
Yeah.
we're going to be able to tap into.
Yeah. We're living in such an important time in history, but I think that
Mhm.
when we're talking about the elevation of consciousness, the recognition of source within us, this is the time. And so if you are noticing your life kind of either falling apart or
Mhm.
you're saying, I this is too small, whatever this is, it's too small.
Mhm.
And if I take that leap, it's a pretty big leap, but this isn't it anymore. Wherever you are, wherever you have been, it's because of this collective awakening that is happening,
Yes.
right? And like you said, we are going to have to come face to face with a lot of the things that we have been avoiding. And we're really good at doing that until life says no more.
Mhm.
And I think that this is one of those times where this is really um it's collective. And so you'll notice people around you like really making significant shifts, especially right in the time that we are in. We're recording this, I don't know today's date, like March 11th. Today's March 11th, right?
Mhm.
March 11th, 2025. We're in the middle of eclipse season. We're in the middle of a Venus retrograde. We're about to head into a Mercury retrograde while all of this is happening. This season is so much about the reconfiguration with a Venus retrograde about us returning to love with a capital L, right?
Mhm.
The love of source, right? Eclipses are happening in the sign of Virgo. The South Node in Virgo is about how do I leave behind this need to control every single part of my life or feel that I ever had any control of every little part of my life and move into a higher expression of Virgo, which is what if I just show up to life and allow life to lead me? What if I'm discerning enough moment to moment and recognize that life itself is a ritual, right? What if I just do that? What if I just do that? Because in the doing that, then somewhere in me, there is an understanding I am held, I am guided, I am protected, I am provided for, right? And then this Venus retrograde is coming right after a Mars retrograde that we experienced from technically from December 2024 through the end of February 2025. Here we have the two cosmic lovers in the zodiac, the archetype of the masculine and then the archetype of the feminine, going retrograde back to back. This doesn't happen all the time. And so, what that means is that we are reconfiguring, redefining what it means to have and express the masculine and the feminine within us. What the masculine Mars retrograde is about why do I say that? Why do I want what I want? Why do I feel that I should go after that? Why am I angry about this? Right?
Mhm.
It's about the coming back to why do I do anything?
Okay. Can I ask you to break down for me? So,
Yeah.
the Mars retrograde no, the Venus retrograde came first, right?
The Mars retrograde came first,
And that's the masculine.
and that's the masculine.
And
Yeah.
so, in that, the questioning was, why do I want what I want? Why am I going after what I'm going after? And that's what
Mhm.
we just came out of.
That's what we just came out of. Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, see how am I get here? Okay. So then, and now we are shifting into the Venus retrograde. And what is the questioning around that space?
So when I study the overall when I see the overall context of what 2025 is, not just the Venus retrograde, when it's happening, what it's coming after, what 2025 means, and that's important to understand because Venus retrograde on its own is very limiting.
Hmm.
If we with a Mars retrograde, we're meant to question, why am I going after that thing? Or why do I keep moving in that direction? Or what is my relationship to courage, and why is something pulling me in that direction, right? All of these are Mars qualities. In Venus retrograde, we're meant to come back to, especially in the context that we're experiencing right now, that we're living in right now. Well, what are my values,
Mm.
right? What do I genuinely deep down desire, that in order for me to step into this new chapter courageously, I have to really cut the cord with a past version of myself,
Oof.
right?
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like this is what I always do with Millie. And for those of you who don't have a Millie to go out to dinner with and ponder your life, I'm sorry for you, but I'm going to share wisdom with you. But, because I feel like I've felt such a deep sense, and tell me if this is the Mars part of like all of a sudden, like, oh, I legitimately have nothing to prove. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I
Right.
don't I like
Mhm,
I'm good. Like
mhm,
whatever is meant to be, that will be. Like I feel like I was just telling
mm,
a group last night, like I have, some like business meetings that have come up that I was just like, I feel like normally I would have like had like pressure on myself of like this is what, and I'm like, I don't care. Like I don't have any, I'm either it or I'm not. And
right,
that's fine
right.
either way. But there's this thing of like the desire is just so strong now to like to have fun. I don't know if that, and is that Venus? Like I just I
Yes.
feel such a like I only want to do what's fun. I only want to do what feels good. I
Right.
really genuinely like I don't care, but I just want to have fun. No, go on, Millie. Tell me why.
Yeah, I love that. Well, absolutely, right? So Mars represents, among a lot of things, right? And I'm trying to really keep this concise.
Yeah.
But Mars also represents how we express our confidence,
Mm,
right? Mars is that, yeah, what is our relationship to our confidence? How do we express that? And depending our relationship with it and how integrated it is, that's how we're going to move about the world. So every time that Mars retrogrades, it is a good time to see, like, am I lacking confidence right now? Like,
mm,
how do I show up to anywhere? How do I show
mhm.
up in life and just stand in this knowing of, yeah, this is me, right? And as we move to the Venus retrograde, which is, I find fascinating that Venus is retrograding between the last sign of the zodiac and the first sign of the zodiac.
Okay.
That is indicative of the last sign of the zodiac. Is there is an ending of a chapter, there is an ending of the relationship to yourself. There is an ending of a role you have played. That when
Mm,
Venus goes into Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, this is you entering this chapter of having this new relationship with yourself. And so it can look like for you, I just want to do things that are fun, because maybe in the past you didn't. Maybe in the past it was like, I have to really make sure that, I earn this. I have to make sure that
mm,
whatever the narrative was, whatever you told yourself, now it's like, no, I'm courageously stepping into the things that bring me joy. And that does take courage in the world that we live in. And
mm.
being able to say, if that's not where I am, wherever that is, then that's not where I'm meant to be. And that's okay.
God. It's always like such a soul balm to talk to you, sister, because I feel like you have this way of weaving in the astrology in terms of the why for whatever the felt sense is. And
Mhm.
I think that's what's so beautiful about astrology and the way that you work with astrology, because a lot of times just in the past before I met you, like it didn't really resonate. It just felt like it
Mhm.
felt really linear to me, honestly, like with like the way it was described, and this is conjunct this, and like, and I couldn't like drop in because I'm such a like, um like the intuition, like that, like I have to
Mhm.
feel things. Like there'll be things that people like have the scientific reason for why it is, and I'm like, I don't know why I know. I just know. It's just
Exactly.
clear. But that's the way that you speak the language of astrology to me, is in a way that it just feels so intuitive, which you're an intuitive astrologer, so tracks. Um, but I think, yeah, what again is different for me is it's so much more of an internal experience around what is happening in the cosmos that we're going through right now. And
Mhm.
that's the inner authority. That's the IA, right? Like that's the thing of like, it used to be like, well, let me go get a reading of what's happening this
Right.
month so I can know what I'm going to feel. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like I feel whatever I feel and I get this clarity. And then I can be in relationship with why that tracks in terms of what we're meant
Mhm.
to be learning right now about ourselves. Not that like there's some, God figure out in the cosmos that's like pulling the strings and like telling you what is going to be true. Like you still are the co-creator of your experience. It's just
Mhm.
how am I integrating all of the invitations to self that are coming up for me, right?
Yeah. I think that looking for certainty
Mm,
is kind of a funny thing because I don't think when we're looking for that, one, we're in a state of fear that tells us, I need to know so that I'm not in this state anymore. Right. Which is fine. I think we all move through that.
yeah.
I don't I don't think we can ever land on any kind of certainty because we're always looking for more. And
Mm.
maybe we're always wondering more, questioning more. There is always, because our soul is limitless, it's vast.
That's what the soul came for. Don't fence me in. I came here to
Right.
expand. That's actually the purpose of me
Right.
being here. Yeah.
Right. And so the sense of certainty, and I can understand looking for certainty or trying to land on certainty in trying times. But I think
Mm,
that the more we look for that, the more we are actually stepping away from what we're actually meant to learn. Because the only certainty that I feel we're here to understand is the certainty of the connection to the self,
oof.
right? And
Yeah.
so that is why I translate astrology in the way that I do. To me,
Mm,
astrology is like an ongoing conversation, right? You can have a chart that looks a certain way and certain things mean certain things, but astrology in itself is not a static study. It
mm,
evolves over time, it evolves as you evolve. And then your placements take on maybe not a completely different meaning, but a perhaps, hopefully, more evolved expression.
mm.
And so astrology is not meant to just be horoscopes or something that tells you that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
No. What is this moment in time invoking in you? What is it asking of you? And I know that I'm not like, I'm really not an astrologer for everyone for that reason. And I get that, and that's okay. But to my experience, and what feels the most honest way to me of having a relationship with astrology is, what is the ongoing conversation that is invoking between your human self and your soul?
I'm smiling because, you're like, I'm not going to be the astrologer for everyone because it's not a lot of times, and correct me if this doesn't feel like the why, but
Hmm.
it's not going to be like a linear framework. It's really going to require that you really tap into your
Hmm.
inner
Hmm.
trust and like what feels true for you. And I think I have often said something very similar about me as a therapist, and that
Hmm.
I'm not going to give you, a treatment plan or any sort of like diagnosis, or like I don't do that, but I will really, direct you home to yourself, and that you, as you would say, are always your own oracle and have
Hmm.
within you multitudes of wisdom and capacity. But what I think is so fascinating about that both of us lead that way is that we're Capricorns, and so much of like what feels resonant about the way we experience the world and we share with one another. And Capricorn's like a very masculine sign. It's
Yeah.
very like in that space of like, task and make it happen and initiative and all these things. But when it comes to like the way that we experience how, it just feels really feminine to me.
Capricorn is actually a feminine sign.
It is? I feel
Yes.
like for so long I've been, like, in the space of, like, it's really masculine because it's so initiative driven or something.
Yeah, but when we look at the zodiac from a holistic perspective, and what I mean by that is when we look at the order of the signs, the order that they are in, Capricorn is the 10th sign of the zodiac. Okay,
Mm.
so it's the second to last. When it's not that one sign is better than the other, but to look at the order of the zodiacs does imply that there is a different level of wisdom that innately and inherently comes with each sign. Now,
I'm laughing, I'm like, "That was the most Capricorn thing to say." It's not that we're better than the others. You can say it, you're safe here, really. Sorry, carry on. I apologize.
but here's a different way of putting it. Can
Hmm.
you imagine just a world full of Capricorns?
Yes, I
No,
can.
no, absolutely not. No,
Okay, fine.
absolutely not.
No, that's fair, fine. Oh,
So
okay. We're
every
kidding
sign,
for the record, everyone. We love all the signs. This is big jokes. Okay.
all the signs have a purpose. All of the
Absolutely.
expression, all of the energy has a purpose. It creates a balance. That's why there are 12 of them.
Hmm.
But when we look at Capricorn in the 10th sign of the zodiac, it's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is father time. It is the planet of karma. It is the planet of understanding that our actions, our decisions have outcomes and consequences, right? So
Hmm.
Capricorn is very inherently aware of that. Anyone born a Capricorn has that knowing in their body, in their soul of if I do this, this will be the outcome.
Yes, we do.
And not everybody has that. Not everybody carries that. And to a Capricorn is, how the fuck do you
Fascinating.
not? Right? How do you
How
survive
do
in
you
the
function?
world? Right.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's our role. That's our role.
Hmm.
So Saturn is that under underlying energy that says be mindful of your actions, right?
Hmm.
Be mindful of the decisions that you're making. So when when you say it feels very masculine and because there's so much initiating, well, because Saturn energy has that understanding, well, if I want this outcome, then I have to do the thing that's going to produce the outcome. There's something very in that case there's something a little linear about that.
Hmm.
Now, every earth sign of the zodiac came to materialize something. That's the function of earth energy in the zodiac, to materialize, to have a relationship with this 3D reality, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's great. We came here to create, to do, to make. For Capricorn, it's important that we look at the sign opposite of Capricorn, which is Cancer, right? I cannot remember where I read this or who wrote it, and I wish I did, but I read somewhere one time that Capricorn has the capacity to climb any mountain, right? As right, as is attributed to the goat. The goat climbs the steepest mountains. But what Capricorn has to be mindful of, it's that it's not climbing the wrong mountain.
Hmm.
It's climbing the mountain that is aligned to their soul.
Hmm.
Just because you can climb a mountain doesn't mean that you need to climb that particular mountain, but you probably can. Why is it important to look at the sign opposite? Because it's Cancer. It's ruled by the moon. It's a much more intuitive energy that says, okay, well, inside of me intuitively, what is important to me? And that is the part that Capricorn goes back and forth with, of checking in with the self, and oh, that's why I'm climbing this mountain. I
Yeah.
don't know how we got here.
Well, because I was saying that I thought it's interesting that Capricorn isn't sort of a masculine energetic, but I think you told me at one point that, and maybe it's because the opposite sign is Cancer, that like that part of like the sea goat, right? Like the
Hmm.
tail on
Hmm.
Capricorn means that it's really sort of integrated in masculine and feminine. And so
Right.
maybe that's what you're saying. Like the initiative is the climbing the mountain part, but the
Right.
tail is the rooted in soul, or that brings me back to the why around what my soul came for. Is that right?
Right. So the sea goat, right? The upper part of the body is the goat. It represents the climbing of that mountain, this very human terrain, right?
Right.
That we function very well under because of that Saturnian quality
Mm,
of being responsible and, showing up and being reliable. All of those Saturnian qualities. But the seahorse part of the sea goat, right? The lower half of that body is underneath the water. And so water represents the intuitive part, the intuitive sense. And
mm.
so how do those two work together?
Okay.
Somewhere along the way, Capricorn became this sign of just the CEO of the zodiac and like the entrepreneur and all of the things that go really well, or have in the past gone really well with this world that we live in.
Mm,
But then when Capricorn energy is not rooted in soul, it becomes very self destructive, even if it is working itself to death.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember now. I remember you telling me that when I was writing the book, and you were like, "Oh, this just like makes so much sense because you're writing about the integration of masculine and feminine, and that's like
Mhm.
such Capricornian energy to be in that space of grappling with how we integrate these energies within ourselves, right?"
Mhm.
Um and it's, yeah, I just think it's really beautiful because I think that there's so much about this is what's happening for all of us, right? Like we're really learning that like either of these dualities within us as a society, as a culture, just bring us out of balance. And we've been so out of balance for so long in this
Mhm.
space of doing and making, and um, the rational space of the linear world, that we're really being called back into. Um, but how do I move from the space of what is the soul's knowing, and the larger why underneath,
Mhm.
in terms of like what I came here for? And it's such an exciting time.
I think so. Yeah. And the why, we have to let the why unfold.
Mm,
We have to let the why show us why. And I don't know if
absolutely.
that makes sense, but we are in a time that we have never experienced this before, like in our lifetime, an awakening like this in our lifetime. And to our human self, that's a lot. We feel it physically. Like
Mm,
it stretches us. It says, it makes us ask ourselves, what am I going to do? What are we going to do in some way, shape, or form? But what does that leave you with? It leaves you with going within. That's
mm.
the point.
Yes.
That's the point.
Yeah. I think that's what's so beautiful about these moments where I've tried everything in terms of the doing, right? Like, I think
Mhm,
whenever we talk about what is a moment of rock bottom or
mhm,
reconfiguring my
mhm,
experience of the world as I've known it, it's always when, I've almost like exhausted myself trying it my way. And
mhm,
then I just like am open to possibility.
mhm,
And that's when we go inward and we start to ask some larger part of ourselves for help. And
mhm,
in that becomes a complete reconfiguration. And recalibration, but really that remembrance that you're talking about. And that's where we start to reclaim our lives and what we came here for in terms of like the larger sense of destiny. Um, and what I think is so beautiful, and for anyone listening, what's beautiful about Millie and her work is that like I feel like my whole life changed, real talk, when I had my first natal chart reading.
Mm,
And I actually didn't have it with you the first time, although that was another pivotal moment the first time that you read my chart. And what's crazy about Millie, you guys, I'm just gonna like throw this in because it's so cool. So any of you've ever seen the movie, it's not a movie, it's a TV series, The Queen's Gambit. Is that what it's called, Millie?
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Which is about a woman that was like a chess master, and she would lie in her bed at night and she would see chessboards and she would see like how she could win chess matches. And Millie does that with astrology charts, y'all. Like Millie's like a savant. I've never like brought up someone who she's read their chart and she doesn't remember at least like pretty significant aspects of their chart. So Millie will be like talking to me and she's like, "Oh, it's because your sun is conjunct your third square." I'm like, "Millie, it has been 4 years since you read that. How do you remember that?" But she remembers, y'all. So but what's so beautiful is having your chart read. If you've never had a natal chart reading, it's like a homecoming. It's literally you being
Mm,
experienced and expressed
mm,
through what the astrologer if astrologer
mhm,
um is saying in a way that it's like, "Oh,
mhm,
I
mhm.
understand. There I am. That's why I've always felt what I felt," right?
Yes. Oh, I love that. There I am. That's such a great
Mhm.
way of putting it because it really is that.
Yeah,
So many times. And it's fascinating. And I think it's all part of the journey, right? So many times, the chart, all it's doing is just reflecting back what you know to be true about yourself, but that the world has told you is somehow unacceptable,
that's right.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. When I was a baby astrologer, that used to like invoke a lot of anger in me. Like, why are people like that? Why do they make people feel that way? And
Mhm.
what I realized over time is no, people's rejection of a very natural part of who you are is part of the journey so that you have no other choice but to hopefully come back to yourself.
That's right.
And maybe it's through a natal chart reading that you can someone can reflect back something back to you and you can say, "See, I knew it." Right? Now, does that mean that there's no room for growth and evolution? No, absolutely not. The point of understanding this is a very like natural part of who I am, of my makeup in this lifetime, is so that you understand it. And then the choice that you have of expressing it in a certain way is actually more empowering than not,
Beautiful.
right? But a
Yeah.
lot of times we ask ourselves, what is wrong with me? But it's because it's just people saying that there's something wrong.
And what's so amazing is when you start to understand things like soul contracts, it's what Millie's saying. Like that person was meant to be the antagonist. They were meant to challenge you and challenge your essence in a way that
Right.
you could come back and reclaim it.
Mhm.
And I mean, we
Mhm.
could just, as we do, go on for hours. But I think you and I are going to be facilitating a day long immersive in LA, which I'm so excited for. Because I think what the world needs more now than it ever has, I'll go ahead and say, like, at any time in human history, is people that have come back into the space of reclaiming their power and their essence. And a lot of
Mhm.
times that's
Mhm.
just understanding whatever I feel, however I move through the world, that is by design. My
Mhm.
authenticity is my offering, it is my
Mhm.
gift to humanity. And so I think what we want to do, and I'm going to speak for us as I say this, is really support you in that like reclamation space and that understanding that who you are is the magic that the world needs in the way that only you are able to offer right now.
Mhm.
That's why you were born right now.
Yeah.
All the point.
Yes. Yes. And one of the things that has occurred to me recently, again, as I think about what this moment in time means, is the responsibility that we actually have individually
Mm.
to recognize our magic, to recognize why we are who we are at this moment in time. Because whether we realize it or not, the collective needs us. We need to step into wherever life is calling us to step into. And so if there's any confusion, if there's any like uncertainty, if there's a lot of things that we can't put words to, we can't do anything about,
Mm.
I feel so much that our workshop is going to do that. Our one day intensive is going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, it circles back to what you were saying about like that fear of being replaced. That's such a visceral fear. It's like when we
Mhm,
understand that our particular brand of magic is
mhm,
so much of not only our soul's design, but is what is necessary for a very specific reason that is in the unfolding that we can't see yet until we're in acceptance of that as a fact, right? So
yes.
it's like all of it is connected to us in the surrender space of, yes, I surrender to who I am. I'm willing to no longer be in the fighting of that. And once we do, whew, buckle up.
Yeah.
Um yeah, so I'm really excited. I feel like when we have collaborated on things in the past, it's brought both of us to tears with just like the magic in the room and the synchronicity that comes up between us and for each of us when I feel like we are vibing on whatever it is
Yeah.
content wise that we're excited to share. And so, yeah, thank you for doing this with me, sister. Like, I can't wait to just be supportive of whatever comes up for everyone who joins us.
Yeah. No, thank you. Are you kidding? I'm so excited for this event. And just so everyone knows, the event is Radical Reclaiming.
Mm,
It is on Saturday, April 5th in Los Angeles. You can check out our Instagrams. There are links there. And it's an event from 12 to 7, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. And I think that it's happening at such a perfect time where we are in the
mm,
middle of eclipse season, in the middle of that Venus retrograde, of a Mercury retrograde, where there's so much up in the air. And that
mm,
is the point. So, how do we land from where our soul is asking us to land right now? Right?
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. And it's going to be here in LA, but if you can't make it to LA, I cannot more strongly recommend getting on Millie's website, booking a reading with her. I promise it will it will rock your world in all the best ways possible. But yeah, I'm so grateful for you, my love. I feel like you have been just such a sacred teacher, sister, fellow traveler on this path at the moments that I needed you most.
Mhm,
And I don't know, I'm just really excited as I know all of the things that are unfolding in this year are unfolding to get to share it with you. And
mhm.
I'm excited for you to share more of your gifts with everyone because you are just such a treasure. I love you so
Mhm.
much.
Oh, thank you so much. I love you so much.
Yeah.
It's such, I mean, you're such a gift. And I've told you this before, like, to find you on my path and to have the conversations that we have, and to be able to have like this shared sense, I don't know, of purpose, and to have someone who reflects how important it is to be talking about these things right now and reminding people of magic and that power that we all have. it, I don't have a lot of people like that in my life, so thank you for being who you are, so and that we can run into each other in this lifetime at this time.
Wow. It's all by design. Um, yeah, really beautiful. Thank you for being on What's My 100%. And if you would like to dive deep with us for a really magical day. Again, as Millie said, Saturday, April 5th, we'll be in LA, actually in Marina Del Rey, but you can check out both of our pages for more information and for more info on my girl Millie. I'm going to put it all in the show notes so you can stay connected to Millie. But
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for being here, my love.
Thank you. Thank you. So much love to you.